Hey everyone, welcome to Sunday Morning Grace. I'm Reverend Elvia.
And I'm Reverend Peter. Welcome, welcome.
We just froze on you for a second there.
We did.
I think they just wanted to frame his happy face. So thank you for being here and joining us. We invite you to grab your cup of whatever is inspiring you at the moment. I'm drinking Darjeeling tea. Peter has his water over
I have
there.
my water.
Whatever it is that inspires you, we invite you to come on in, grab a cup of whatever, and join us as we talk about the spiritual birth and really creating the path to re-emergence. The spiritual birth canal actually is what we're technically calling it. So we have 4 different points for you today, and it's been an interesting process to come up with this because, as we were tuning in and getting ready to do this, I was like, this is point number 1. I'm not really feeling like it. I'm just not feeling like inspired by this topic. And on a deeper level, I know that I am. And I think this is where we're coming up with the point number 1 is that a spiritual birth or rebirth is something that, we may not want to happen. We may not feel like it. We may not be in the mood for it to happen.
Absolutely. And, it just like the analogy of, planting a seed that, it's got to take root and it's got to burst forth when it's ready. But that sort of inertia, I think, is because it's not quite ready. It's not, it's not, yeah, let's go. It's like, oh, this is going to be work.
Yeah. And so I think that at the outset, there can be some resistance to even thinking about this, contemplating it. And the first image that came into my mind, because I love the whole imagery actually of birthing, because I think that's what we're doing as humanity right now is we're really birthing a whole new existence, a whole new iteration, version, evolution, really, of humanity. So first time I gave birth, our daughter didn't want to come out. She was breech. She was upside down. And, so that was a whole thing. But, just knowing her now and the way that she entered the world, there was definitely a part of her that's like, yeah, I don't want to do this. There was definitely some resistance to wanting to go through the birthing process. You remember that?
Absolutely. I got to witness it. I didn't get to experience it directly, but I got to witness it.
Yeah, they actually had to turn her. They did what's called a version. So they put me on a bed like this. One doctor was on one side pushing at the bottom, the other was at the top pushing at the top to flip her around. And he had a harder time with it than I did. But
it took a few tries. In fact, they were on the last. They were like, okay. It was actually one doctor trying to do it, and then they said, well, let's both try to do it at the same time, and if that doesn't work, then she was going to be scheduled for C-section.
Right.
Because it was at the point where our daughter could no longer turn around on her own. It was that crowded at that point. She was that big.
Yep. Yeah. So, and it feels actually like there's a message in that. Thank you for bringing that up because we didn't find out until fairly far into the pregnancy that she was breech and that she may have turned around at the last possible minute to be breech. I'm not sure exactly, but it feels like there's an additional message in that you may have come into this lifetime, you may have gotten up to this point, this moment, feeling like you didn't expect any of this. You didn't expect to have to go through this spiritual rebirth. You didn't expect to, and there's a little clairaudient sort of emphasis. You weren't expecting, all of this. So that could add to the resistance. And I think the biggest thing to emphasize with this resistance is to honor it, to be gentle with yourself, to just be okay with wherever it is that you're at. Do tapping, EFT, seek out friends, do things that are healthy for you. but just be okay with any resistance that you may be having.
Absolutely. We ready for number 2? So for number 2, what came to mind was in sailing, there's a term, and there's also an area in the Atlantic
Oh, I didn't know
that are called the doldrums, and well, I think that area is called the doldrums because the doldrums often happen there.
Yeah.
And essentially, there's no wind. The wind disappears, and if you're sailing,
It's maddening.
It's maddening because the boat gets sloppy. It's basically just being sort of pushed around by there are waves.
There's no direction.
But there's just no direction. You don't have steerage because for sailing you have to have wind, pushing the boat so that you can steer. And when there's no momentum, then there's nothing you can do with the tiller or the wheel. And it really is analogous for me to the feeling about this point in winter here in the Northeast. We're really in the heart of the winter, and we might get a really nice day, but it's really not close enough to spring to say, oh, it's just around the corner. And we're far enough away from the fall and the nice weather in the fall that it feels long. It feels, man, this has been a long time that it's difficult to walk outside because it's cold or it's icy or it's snowy.
Yeah, right now it's ice.
Right now it's ice. But it makes me think of the cycles, the spiral cycles that we go through. And so, this point in the winter, it's like, oh, we're back to this again. and with if we're truly spiritual beings, we are always evolving our spiritual game. And when you come back to the point where you have to mutate, you have to birth, it can be a little frustrating because it's like, oh, I thought I already learned this lesson, or I thought I already, had something. Reverend Elvia and I have a routine that we do when we call in the morning, and we've been doing it for quite a while. I get the sense that at some point we're going to have to change our game, that we're going to have to make a shift to that. Now, it may not be tomorrow, it may not be next week.
This is news to me, by the way.
Well, so I was thinking about this. Because we haven't always called in the day the same way. But where we're at, we've been doing for quite a while. And when that point happens, I think there's going to be a little frustration that it's like, oh, but this has been working so well. But if it does happen, we'll both know that, yeah, but we got to do it.
Yeah. So I think, part of the doldrums is feeling like there's no direction because we're in the midst of changing directions, in part.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm smiling because we're going to be driving down to Florida next week to be away for 2.5 weeks or so. And the angels always have a way of using our vacation time to accomplish something on their agenda. You remember last time that we went on vacation, we went, before the pandemic, yeah. We came back and we had a whole new routine to our spiritual practice.
Mm-hmm.
So, anyway. So, thank you for that. Yes. Point number 3 is that birth is inevitable. Our daughter wasn't not going to be born. And we are not going to be able to change this process of birthing that we're all going through. And I say all, it's a personal experience and it's also a collective experience. And if you are into the quantum and the holographic model, you may understand or at least have an inkling that what we do for ourselves, we do for the collective. So we are birthing ourselves on behalf of the collective. And we don't really have a choice, and I think that the cycles of Mother Earth really give us this beautiful container to go through this, as Peter said, like the spiral year after year after year, and some cycles feel, I'm just getting this image of, sometimes our butterfly bushes are packed with flowers and bees and other seasons, they're kind of sparse. So it feels like we are preparing for a really big birth. That the re-emergence this year in particular, at least what I'm sensing, feels like it's sizable.
So going back to that thought on, birth, it's inevitable. The fetus has to come out. If you think about it, just the fetus is comfortable and warm and cared for in there, and on some level probably doesn't want to come out, but it can't stay in there forever. It would be detriment to the fetus and to the mother. So it comes a time where it's got to come out. In the terms of what we're talking about, there comes a time where there has to be change. There has to be a mutation or iteration that moves you forward on the spiritual level.
Yeah, and more than just the spiritual level, really, on all levels.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. And again, I think being okay with whatever emotions come up as, we're all processing this change is important, to not fight those emotions, but instead to just look at them for what they are. Hello anxiety, hello anger, hello frustration, whatever it is. Look at it. Don't let it be an authority in your life. Do what you need to listen to what it has to say and to release it,
Absolutely. And I think that brings us to point 4.
I think it really does bring us to point 4, which is
being present. I mean, so it's called you hear people say a lot, it's the birthing process. So it's a process. And there are a lot of different moments. There's the doldrums, and then there's the, in birthing, there's the physical aspect and the pushing and all that. So it's a process, and just being present with where you are on that process. That, starting back to point 1, you're not really inspired, and then you get inspired when you dig into it, and then you have to do something with that inspiration, and then once you do something with that inspiration, you've made change, and you may have to, anytime there's change, you may have to adjust, but all through that, just being present with where you're at is a key.
Yeah. And I think trusting is such a big part of that process, because, not feeling inspired by this topic at the outset when we first started talking about it, but just trusting, because knowing through guidance and just connection to source that it's still what needs to happen. It leads to this point where it feels really good talking about it, and it feels really good, processing it with Peter and sharing all of that with you. So trusting that when something doesn't feel totally good from an ego perspective, but it's guided, that it's, that it's right, and that it's leading you someplace that's good. So part of this that I wanted to just mention and point out is because Gigi just popped up behind the laptop, if you're seeing a little jiggle there, is that there's a lot of distraction. And cats are a happy distraction in our house anyway. But there's a lot of distraction and noise out in the world that's not so happy, that's difficult to look at, that's difficult to witness and try to make sense of. And I think a big part of being present is focusing on what what is in the here and what is in the now. For instance, looking out the window, some of the branches are still covered with ice and they're glistening in the sun. That's really beautiful. Just enjoying this hot, delicious cup of tea is really yummy and feels good. And it's not about keeping your head in the sand, but it's about being very present of where you are, and not sort of time traveling or space traveling to other parts of the world, with your heart, and experiencing things that you don't need to be experiencing. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think we can, as you said, we don't want to bury our heads in the sand, but if we're constantly thinking about some of the things that are going on in the world, and that's like where you keep going to, you're depleting your energy. It's not that you shouldn't potentially think about those things and discuss them, and maybe even take some action if you can, but just getting lost in that constantly is depleting of your energy, and being present is really where you need to be.
Yeah, and doing that by staying close to your guidance. So is this a news segment that I should watch right now? Yes. Is the human design sacral response. And just knowing that connection. Yes. Or is it a no? And kind of holding that higher vision. My brother was talking about the agreement that Putin and the head of China had come to some kind of amends, that they'll do whatever they need to for each other. And he began to go down this dark path, and it took a little bit of work, but I held it to this higher space of, and it still takes a little bit of work, honestly, but that's why we call it a spiritual practice, because we're always practicing. But well, that could be a good thing, that there's possibility that could be the highest path, and that it's going to create more goodness in this world. And certainly can go down a path of thinking otherwise very easily, but we don't have to. And that's a choice. We don't have to. We can hold that vision and that space for the higher possibilities. And I think that's a lot of the reason, honestly, why we're here.
Absolutely. So the tenet for this week fits perfectly. I drew it this morning, and I surrender to my soul's purpose through sacred prayer. A great way to be that presence, and just surrender to, I'll show it, but I know you can't read it because it shows up backwards.
It doesn't show up backwards.
Oh, it just shows up backwards to us, I guess.
Yeah.
The magic of the computer.
I surrender to my soul's purpose through sacred prayer.
Perfect way to be present. And be okay with wherever you're at. So
I just picked a card for this month from the Saints and Mystics deck. This is by Andres Engracia, a newer deck of mine that I love. And the card is Saint Joseph. Why? What?
It's a baby.
Oh, true, right? Divine creation. That's true. So that would be the baby Jesus in his arms.
And just symbolically about what we're talking about, completion, right? We're talking going through the birthing process.
And look at how wonderful that creation that we are all birthing is.
Absolutely.
I don't think I've picked this card yet.
I hadn't seen it before.
That's really kind of cool. It's really interesting when a new card shows itself, and we've been using this deck every day for probably a month. That's awesome. All right, so anything else we need to...
I feel complete.
I feel complete.
I mean, we've had the birth, so we're...
So we are good. We are on to the nurturing now. All right. So we're going to close here with our 12 tenets of the Divine Order of the Sacred Rose, and invite you to either join us, say these along with us, or just, close your eyes and allow the words to go wherever within you they are most needed right now. Ready?
I'm ready.
I open my heart with deep gratitude and intend today to master my spiritual, mental, emotional, and physical energies. I am dedicated to my spiritual practice. I surrender to my soul's purpose through sacred prayer. I own my guidance. I live in partnership with my angels. I serve with a loving heart. I am compassionate in every moment. I trust it's all good. I allow immediate forgiveness. I honor my truth. I listen to the spiritual messages within my physical body. I express myself creatively. I am one with Mother Earth, and so it is. So much love to each and every one of you. Happy February. Be well, be blessed, be present.
Lots of love.
Blessings.